Ladies and gentlemen, recently George Floyd's brother spoke before the UN. And there's an article that came out in The Guardian, June 17th, 2020. UN Human Rights Chief calls for reparations to make amends for slavery, which we know the US is just going to blatantly ignore. The UN's human rights chief has urged countries to confront the legacy of slavery and colonialism and to make amends for centuries of violence and discrimination through reparations. Shoot, this country would die before they end racism. They would die before they end that. Addressing an urgent debate on racism and police brutality in the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, Michelle Bachelet called on countries to examine their past and to strive to better understand the scope of continuing systematic discrimination. She pointed to, the ongoing killing in America, such as George Floyd, a 46-year-old Black man who died in Minneapolis in the U.S. on May 25th after a white police officer, since charged with murder, kneeled on his neck for nearly 9 minutes. This symbol of systematic racism has become, it is just calling out how much excessive use of force that police are using, especially on the Black public, is now being called out worldwide. There's protests going on in America, but as well as overseas for the death of George Floyd. So they're saying it's a disproportionate, excessive use of force by law enforcement against people of African descent, according to people of color, and against indigenous people and racial and ethnic minorities in many countries across the globe. Bachelet said, behind today's racial violence, systematic racism, and discriminatory policing lies the failure to acknowledge and confront the legacy of the slave trade and colonialism, she said. She stressed the need to make amends for centuries of violence and discrimination, including through formal apologies, truth-telling processes, and reparations in various forms. Wednesday's urgent council debate was called in response to Floyd's killing, which was caught on amateur video, sparking worldwide demands to address systematic racism in the US and around the world. African countries are calling for the council to ask Bachelet and other UN rights experts to investigate racism and police brutality in the US, but potential support for their draft resolution is unclear. The US itself withdrew from the council 2 years ago, but a number of its allies are uncomfortable with the country being singled out in the text, according to observers of the process. Bachelet herself did not speak out specifically in favor of the draft resolution, but she did stress the need for decisive reforms. She insists on the importance of making clear that Black lives matter, Indigenous lives matter, the people of color lives matter. All human beings are born equal in dignity and rights. That is what the council and my office stands for. Well, that all sounds good, and I've been hearing stuff like that my whole life. But saying it and practicing it on a regular basis are two very different things. And Racism is America's weakness, and it is going to be the thing that's going to bring America down. It's practically bringing it down now. Look at all the protests in the street, and you had the president threatening to get the military on people, and nothing has been resolved in all these weeks. And then, of course, you always got these guys with guns that think they're going to go out there and scare somebody. But the bottom line is you have centuries of unresolved problems, and trying to run everybody off the streets and ignore the real root of the problem, that's not going to get you anywhere. All you're going to do is have a lot of people with resentment, and eventually those folks are going to head right back out in the streets. I was looking at an article probably about a week or two ago, and they said these protests in the streets are actually going to get worse in America as time goes on, especially with the virus. It's already getting worse in places that reopen, and people are unable to work. They're unable to get their lives back to what it used to be. That these protests out in the streets are going to get worse. And the nature of the protest is also going to change over time. And it's going to be for a variety of different reasons why people will be in the streets protesting. Those of you that are sitting around talking about going back to the way it was, I think you're going to have to stop living out those fantasies. This country is never going back to the way it was. The only thing you're going to do is sit around and disappoint yourself. It's not going back. Okay. Wishing it away, that doesn't work. That sounds like some fairy tale BS. It doesn't work. Reality is you got, I think officially they said 46 million people that are not working. And I don't care what that job claim said. Remember, they said it could take 10 to 12 years to get everybody back working to the level that it was back in February, because the shutdown started in March. And people are still getting laid off. I believe it was 1.2 million they announced this week was laid off the previous week. I tell you what, if you think you're going to get anything back the way that it was, I think you're definitely not in reality, because it is simply not going to happen. And see, the old bag of tricks are no longer working. It's just not. And I think that's all you got to play from, is from those old bag of tricks. And I feel bad for you, because you're going to be disappointed each and every time. But ladies and gentlemen, those of us that are in reality, please tell me what you think. Do I believe the UN is going to make a difference in reparations? No, because I have heard these UN statements before, and they never amount to anything. As long as there's no consequences on a country for their past deeds, and they're still carrying out systematic racism and institutional racism even to this day. So until you put out real serious plans and then put those plans into action, then all of this statement stuff and announcing this about this country and colonialism and racism, it really all means nothing if there's no action behind those words. And there never really is. It's very rare to see that. In fact, I have never seen it in my lifetime, and I doubt if we'll see it now. But y'all, please tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.